I committed the adultery.
He committed a lot more.
I committed adultery.
Oh, you did a lot more than that, sir. This is Wretched Radio. Have you seen the viral video? It's salacious. It's gossipy. We're not going to use it for that purpose. Instead, we are going to learn a lesson from a Sunday service in an Indiana church like no other. The pastor taking the platform to announce, 20 years ago, I committed adultery. Sounded like a whole lot of chin boogie to me, because what he did was far more grievous than committing adultery. Instead, it turns out he took the virginity of a 16-year-old girl on his office floor while she was wearing a purity ring. The pastor actually received a standing ovation for his confession and willingness to step down from the pulpit. But then things didn't go as planned for this preacher, because the congregation started to yell out, "Hey, let us talk. We have something we want to say." And the no longer 16-year-old and her husband took the platform from him to share the actual details, which our world is more than happy to share because it slanders Christ and his Christ ones and his beloved church. You're about to hear that Sunday service that somebody recorded, and you're about to hear the TMZ stinger. Why? Because gossip rags like TMZ love to report this. So does mainstream media. They love to report this because it's oh so salacious. Why do we want to endure what you're about to hear? Recently, you've seen or heard about the Southern Baptist Convention report on the executive committee done by Guidepost Solutions that reveals, this is the allegation, over 700 allegations of sexual abuse that were not addressed by the executive committee and leadership. Why didn't they respond to this? I think there's a couple of reasons. One, they were getting very bad legal advice. Number two, they were more concerned about the convention than people. But I can't help but wonder if, three, that they are not as shocked by sexual abuse allegations as we should be. We're hearing about them all too often these days, and we are in danger of becoming rather ho-hum-like. Oh, another one. Or we don't take time to consider, whoa, what happened there? And what has been the collateral damage? You're about to hear that collateral damage. And this should move us to have compassion and take very seriously the allegations made by a man or woman about sexual abuse.
I committed adultery. It was nearly 20 years ago. It continued far too long. It involved one person, and there's been no other, nor any other situation of unbecoming conduct for the last 20 years. I will not use the Bible to defend, protect, to deflect my past sin. I have no defense. I committed the adultery.
As you're about to hear, yeah, he committed adultery. He committed a lot more.
In accordance with our church bylaws, I'm stepping aside, stepping down from ministry responsibilities, and have committed to the Lord and now to you that I will submit to the process and recommendations of this board.
So far, apparently so good, the congregation stood up and cheered his willingness to be oh so transparent. And then suddenly the tables turned.
If you love us, please let us talk.
For 27 years, I lived in a prison. It was not 20 years. I lived in a prison of lies and shame. Lying to protect the Lowe family. For years, I thought I was a horrible person having suicidal thoughts, not realizing what had been truly done to me.
That should be enough. It continues, but shouldn't that break our hearts? in an effort to protect the pastor. You want to talk about spiritual abuse in addition to sexual abuse? Second, she had suicidal thoughts to take her life because of what was done to her by the pastor who confessed committing adultery.
I was a victim, and I would still be in a prison if my brother, and many of you know him, Edgar Wolf, had not approached me just 2 weeks ago with what he had seen as a teenager that bothered him all these years. His pastor in bed with his younger sister, a t-shirt and underwear on.
Collateral damage number 2. The family members of the abuse victim, in this instance, the brother who apparently spied and captured a glimpse of the pastor in a bed with his sister. You don't think that affected him, covering it up for 27 years? And a pastor who is now willing to admit he committed adultery? Hoofda, you talk about spiritual abuse all the way around.
People knew but were too afraid to come forward, and they have now. The lies and the manipulation have to stop. I was a prisoner, and you kept me in your prison. I'm a prisoner no longer. I was just 16 when you took my virginity on your office floor.
Hold the phone, Henrietta. Try to envision a 16-year-old church-going girl wearing a purity ring, having her virginity stolen by her pastor, 16 years old. 16. They're barely becoming aware of their faculties and their surroundings. We limit the behavior and the privileges that 16-year-olds receive. They don't get to drive a car. They don't get a license at 16. Maybe they do now, but barely at 16. You're just, okay, we think maybe you can get a driver's permit at 16. You can't drink. You can't vote. This child wasn't just the victim of a pastor having an affair. She was the victim of a man. What else do you call this when an adult male takes the virginity of a 16-year-old girl? Incidentally, you should know, in the state of Indiana, while the age of consent is 16, a person who is at least the age of 18 in a position of supervision or trust that engages in any sexual activity with a child over the age of 16 but under the age of 18 commits child seduction, according to state law. It comes with a maximum penalty of 1.5 years in prison, up to a $10,000 fine. I don't think that's near enough, frankly. And incidentally, I don't think 12 and a half years for Josh Duggar is enough either, according to the authorities in his porn case. They've never seen more grievous images than the 200 pictures that were found on his computer. Videos of sexual abuse on children as young as 18 months to get 12 and a half years? No, that's not going to cut it. This pastor most likely won't see any jail time because of a statute of limitations. Prosecution for this crime must begin before the victim reaches 31. She's no longer 31. She's past that, but she has not passed the memory of what was done to her.
Do you remember that? I know you do, and I have plenty of other stories that I could bring to your remembrance. You did things to my teenage body that had never and should have never been done. Don't look at me like that. You know the truth. I know, but you can tell the truth because this is a lie.
I'm letting you tell the truth.
But you need to tell the truth. You know better than it was.
Listen, my wife is not just adultery, it's another level when it's a teenager. And I will not let this man talk about my wife like that. It happened for 9 years. When she was 15, 16, the sexual grooming started. And it lasted until she met me and we started dating. This is the truth. This was Bobby's purity ring, which she wore while this man had sex with her.
Ugh. Hopefully we got the point of that. Whether it's a teenager or an adult, sexual abuse is wicked. It is an awful crime and violation of an image bearer of God, but especially with children. 16 years old. Let us not make the apparent mistake of the executive committee of the Southern Baptist Convention and be blasé or willing to cover up criminal activity which demands a criminal investigation because an individual who does this deed inside of a church has stepped out of the realm of authority of the church and into the realm of the authority of the government, and he should receive what is due to him by the government who has been given the sword for this very reason. The next time you hear about another allegation, perhaps we're going to take it seriously, investigate earnestly, because sexual abuse, what word describes how ugly it is? It should break our hearts. This is Wretched Radio.
Detective Friel, can you tell us what's happening here?
Yeah, what's happening here is a clear demonstration of the noetic effect of the fall. Genesis 2, Paul elaborates in Romans chapter 3. Jeremiah tells us that everybody's heart is deceitful and wicked. 4 words, great white throne judgment.